Hey guys, this is Ivan Carreno and Abel Arriaga. We are the two owners of Mezcal Carreno US, which is our family's brand of mezcal that's coming up for the first time from San Dionisio, Ocotlan, Oaxaca. Been producing since 1904, and it's the first time it's in the valley. So we are super excited to share this artisanal product with you guys and have you guys learn some cool mezcal facts.
So our mezcal is artisanally made in Oaxaca. We only produce this brand, that's all we create. We have beautiful bottles that represent Zapotec royalty, and along with that we have some of the rarest and we think some of the best tasting mezcal available, with agave species that take between 10 to 25 years to reach maturity before we harvest them.
All right guys, first of all, I think we should teach you guys exactly what mezcal is. Don't you think, Abel?
Yep.
All right, so mezcal is anything that gets made from agave. Mezcal is a big category. It's the father umbrella or the godfather umbrella for all of the agave products. Anything that gets made from agave falls underneath the mezcal category, and then there's like little slivers, little varietals. And there's actually over 200 different species of agave.
Right.
And so out of that, around 30 to 40 of them have a high concentration of sugar that will actually distill it. One of those is the Blue Weber Tequilana agave, which is the tequila agave. So tequila is mezcal, but mezcal cannot be tequila. You with me there on that one? Okay. Then there's different ones: Tobola, Tobasiche, Quiche, Lumbre, Coyote, Tepestate, Espadina, Roqueño, Cerrudo, different ones, and so on and so forth. And when I say 30 to 40 of them, some towns in Oaxaca call them by different names, even though they're very closely related or very in the same family of agave species as well too. Then you also have separate sections for like Bacanora, Sotol, Raicilla, who got just a denomination of origin recently. And then agave distillates as well too. So that's kind of like the overall umbrella for mezcal.
Yeah, a good way to say it to your clients and guests is why mezcal is the wine of agave spirits. Someone may have had Chardonnay, but that does not mean that they've had a different type of wine. And so really with mezcal, we always suggest you let them try it, because you never know what someone's palate's going to prefer until they actually try it, because our varietals taste anywhere from jalapeno, earthy, rich minerality, all the way to sweet papaya, root, and cedar. So they're vastly different. Each one has its own kind of story it's telling through the taste, and that's why you should offer it to your guests, even if they don't like tequila or they never tried mezcal, because they might find something in there that they didn't really know existed, because mezcal is so unique and different on its own. What we have here are wild mezcal, so it's another great key factor to talk to your guests about. Ours come from the central valleys of Oaxaca to the Valley of the Sun. That's why we call this the Valley to Valley flight. It's our connection from Oaxaca to Arizona. And then with that, our species of agave take anywhere between 10 to 25 years to reach maturity before we harvest them. So if someone goes, where's your aged version? Ours are aged in nature. We don't need to put them in a barrel to make them taste more like wood, because each species is vastly different on its own. Our Tobasiche actually looks like a Joshua tree or a yucca plant, versus our Tobola, which is very small, maybe about the size of a basketball, taking 10 to 15 years to reach maturity. So there's so much history within each plant. You're going to taste that when you're enjoying that mezcal. When you offer them a sample or a flight of it, they're really going to have an experience that they can't get anywhere else. And that's the great thing with what mezcal offers.
That's true. And just kind of touching on that point that you're talking about, how it's wine of spirits, it's very terroir driven. Mezcal is one of the spirits that has a lot to do with all of that. Altitude, elevation, humidity, sunlight. You can have the same species of agave, but if it grows in the lower part of the valleys of Oaxaca, or if it grows up in the higher elevations, it's going to taste vastly different. Some of them get a little bit more rain, some of them are going to get less rain, some of them are going to get more sunlight, and that's going to affect all of the taste that is going to come out through that mezcal. So it's always fun trying to learn about all this and trying to go down that little rabbit hole of trying to explain and find those different nuances that come with each bottle.
Correct. And Oaxaca is very far south, southwestern part of Mexico. So it is similar if Arizona and California were one state. You have coastlines, you have forests, you have valleys, you have desert. And that's why so many agave species are from there. About 80% of the world's mezcal comes from Oaxaca. And with that, you have a different place. We have different plants, which we talked about, and there's also a different process. And we'll dive into that process that makes mezcal unique to its own category.
An agave, basically a succulent that you've seen. It basically sits there in nature, and it's very sugary rich inside of its core. The arms, which are called pencas, are actually not very sugary rich. They're actually very, very bitter. And they have thorns, and that was nature's way of protecting itself from its very sugary core that it has, so it doesn't get eaten by cows or horses or javali or just animals in general. So it was protecting itself with thorns and long arms. But based off of those sugars, that's what you're gonna wanna go ahead and distill, and that's what's gonna convert to the alcohol. So you want to harvest right up at the point of maturity for these agaves, because if you're under harvesting or if you're taking them out while they're young, you're not going to get a good yield out of it, and it's not going to taste the same as well too. Kind of like if you've ever eaten a green banana versus like just a ripe banana, like a banana that's actually ready, or if you get like one that's just been overly sat there and it's gonna just be extra sweet. So that's kind of how it is. So the plant sits in nature, just kind of getting enough energies, getting enough sugar ready to sprout up, and so it'll actually shoot up what's called a quiote, right out of the middle of the stalk. It'll grow up to about a foot a day. And so what it's going to do is it's going to travel all those sugars from the heart, the corazon, and it's going to raise up into little flower pods that'll get pollinated by usually bats, and then it'll open up, drop seed, which is usually about 10,000 on average, and then usually maybe 1 to 2 will germinate. But if you don't let it do that, what you do when you have the quiote sprouting up is you chop it off and you leave all those sugars inside of the heart. That's when you know it's going to be ready for the mezcal production process as well. What you do after that is you got to harvest that plant out of the ground. You got to chop off all the pencas, which are all the leaves, the bitter leaves, as close to the heart as possible, and you leave kind of what looks like almost an artichoke looking like. And then you open it up. You open that agave plant or that corazon or that piña to make sure that there's like no rot on the inside of that plant and it's usable. Then you cook it in a conical shape oven, so it looks like a cone. It's underneath the ground and it's lined with lava rock. And that'll help retain the heat. So you get a good fire going in there, and it's usually encino wood that's readily available, or pine wood, or whatever it is that's readily available in Oaxaca. You get a good fire in there going, you lay down a layer of bedrock, then you lay down a layer of already squeezed out agave fibers, which are called bagazo. What you're left over with is bagazo, and so you put a layer of bagazo on top of that so you don't actually rest your hearts or your piñas right on top of the rocks, so they don't overchar and they don't get an overly smoky taste. But then you build a little pyramid mound, and you cover that with usually about a tarp, and then you put about 2 feet of dirt on top of it, and it just sits there, just kind of smoking for, on average, 5 days. And that's where it gets that smoky taste that everybody says it's just smoky. Just a byproduct, that's all it is. From that, after you do that, then what you're gonna do is you're gonna open it up, you're gonna let it rest, and people let it rest from about a day to a couple weeks. We usually let it rest for about 5 days. And then you're gonna go ahead and mash it. You're gonna mash it on what's called a tahona. We've got a little desktop version off of it right here. And it's basically a giant stone wheel that gets pulled by a horse or a donkey. And so it just kind of goes around and around and around. And there's usually somebody kind of feeding the agave right in the front of it, right?
Yep, so this is how it gets smashed. So all those fibers and juices get squeezed out from a 2,000-pound version of this. And this is what gets you the artisanal process. So our bottles are all labeled artisanal. That's what mezcal is done the right way, versus if it doesn't have artisanal ancestral on the bottle, it's being done industrialized. With that, the big question we get is, why don't you just use machinery? It's the same reason you don't make guacamole or pesto by putting it into a blender. Certain things have to be done a certain process to have the flavors really come out the right way. And tahona mashing it, we really do believe it makes that taste in your final product really shine, versus if we were to put it through machinery and have it shredded the agaves after they've been cooked that way.
Yeah, I feel like it leaves like the soul, like the history and everything that it's gotten from that plant. Like it's just like it's soul of Mexico that's in there. That's what I feel like it. So once you get those juices kind of in there and all of those agave fibers that are already kind of squeezed out, you're going to put those in a vat. And your vats are about 1,500 to 2,000 liters. You're going to add a little bit of water, and then it's going to start doing its course of open air fermentation. You're just going to let it open air ferment, and this is where that subject that we were touching on earlier, which is the terroir subject, is going to come into play a lot. If you're open air fermentating, and during the time that you're fermentating, you've got some banana trees, or you've got mango trees, or you've got papaya trees, or guava trees, it's going to grab that wild yeast from these trees, and it's going to actually impart some of those nuances, some of those flavors onto that specific batch. And so let's say you've got that batch done, and next year you have a different set of trees, then it's going to grab those actual nuances from that wild yeast that it has. So it's very batch orientated and very open air yeast fermentation that it'll grab from just where it's at.
Yeah, a good way to look at it is similar to wine again, where it's a vintage. There might be a certain year where just the way the grapes grew, the water, the rain, the seasons, that it was a very good year. It's the same thing with these agave species when they're fermentating. you're going to have different yeast of that time period, but also the agave itself, because they're taking anywhere between 10 to 25 years to reach maturity, they're going to have these nuances. So we are never creating a formula, we are creating art. And that's the way we look at it. And it's going to be slightly different each time. The basis is still there because we're using a particular species, but then the difference is the process is still the same, but there's these slight nuances that happen throughout that process. They're going to give you a slight variable. And that's really what's great about Mezcal is you're taking a journey rather than you're getting that same product all the time.
Yeah, and that's where you can tell. It's kind of like that, touching on that artwork that you're seeing. You know, Picasso has some great arts and pieces that are not identical. Not both of them are identical, and that's the cool part about it. After you have that on your open air fermentation pine vat, usually you're going to want to go ahead and distill. And we've got another kind of little desktop version here. This is what's called a copper alembic, and usually they fit anywhere from about 350 to about 500, 550 liters off of it. And so what you're going to do is you're going to basically open up your copper alembic. You're going to take your top off, and you're going to fill up the bottom portion off of it. You're going to fill it up with that mixture of bagasso, water, sugars, everything. And then you're going to seal this. You got to seal this all the way around. And you're going to get a slow simmer fire going underneath it. And when I say slow simmer fire is because alcohol evaporates at a lower temperature than water. So if you get it really hot, then you're going to start evaporating water, and then you're going to get a lot of water that comes out, and that's not what you want. So this is where all those senses come into play. This is where it takes a lot of experience because it takes sight sense. How fast is your mezcal shooting out on the other side? What kind of noise is it making? How is it tasting? Like, these are all senses that you have to be paying attention that you have to do. So usually once you fill this up and you distill, the alcohol will start to evaporate. It'll travel through your tube, and then it'll hit your condenser coil, which is normally inside a tank of water. So it goes from a gas, and then it cools down into a liquid, and then there's a receptacle, kind of like we have this jicara here. I wish it was active and kind of spitting out mezcal here. But it'll collect it, usually anywhere from about 80 to 100 liters. You will also get what's called your head, or the beginning portion off of it. Then you'll get an actual body portion off of it. And then at the end, you're gonna get a cola, is what it is. So you're gonna wanna separate those as well. And then basically you're gonna have to start the process all over again. You're gonna have to open this up manually, dig everything out, fill it back up, and start it all over again. And you're gonna have to do that twice, double distillation, to be able to get certified. Otherwise, you cannot get certified to export and have it actually be called mezcal, and then it'll have to be called agave distillate.
Yep. So once mezcal is then done twice, we're able to put it in our tank, and then we're able to bottle up as needed. And we shoot for 45, 46% on our alcohol proof because we think that's the right essence, where you still get that strength you expect from mezcal, but it really allows the flavors of the agave to shine, and you get some of those different notes like pineapple, papaya, root, cedar. All those really go through when you have that high sipping mezcal, and it's great for cocktails as well. But that process, again, there's a bunch of different steps in there, and getting the right plants, letting them be mature, cooking them the right way, not too long, not too short, tahona mashing them. Each of those steps, if you just do it a little bit better than everybody else, your final product is that much better. And that's really what Mezcal Carreno shines at, is doing every step of the process the right way from the very beginning to the end. So that way you get a fantastic product at the end. So our mezcal truly is exceptional in terms of its quality, its taste, and what your guests are going to get out of it once they experience it.
So you're saying the exceptional is possible?
It's very true.
That's right.
So now we're going to tell you about our 4 expressions. Each Mezcal Carreno bottle has a completely different expression in there because some of them are different varietals, but also we have a very unique blend that we'll talk about at the end. The first one is called Tobala. Tobala is a very small agave. It takes between 10 to 15 years to reach maturity before we harvest it. Its size is roughly an oversized basketball, and it's got rosette-shaped pencas, leaves, that surround it. So again, vastly different than your tequila plant, which much bigger, 300 pounds, and its leaves are very sharp, sword-like. The Tobala will give you notes of floral, almond, and chive. It's one of the most fascinating ones to smell because it just smells so good and it has such a unique nose to it. Definitely a crowd favorite, more on the traditional side. If someone's used to mezcal, this is my go-to for that.
That's right, that's a good one. You got 2 expressions over there though. Oh, perfect. Gonna share. This is my personal favorite, and I think that's why you handed it off to me, but this is Tobasiche. This is a different one. It looks very, very different than that other expression we have over there, which is Tobala. This one, like he was saying earlier, it grows up kind of tall like a Joshua tree or like a yucca plant. So it kind of looks like a log once you get done. And instead of having a big, wider rosette, it's got like thinner leaves that shoot straight out, kind of. And it's part of the Karwinski family. There's other ones that are called Quiche, Biquiche, Madre Quiche, and this one's called Tobasiche. This one itself, the actual plant resembles kind of wood, and I think that that's where it gets some of those kind of woody notes to it. It has a lot of cedar note to it, and it's because the actual plant is very, very dense like wood. And it also grows in the lower part of the valleys of Oaxaca, and it's more of a dry place, and so that's where it gets that dry wood cedar smell to it. So I imagine myself every time I drink or smell this, that I'm walking through like a cedar forest. It also, because it grows up kind of taller, they say the roots need to go down deeper, and so it goes through like multiple layers of soil, and that's where you kind of get like a root flavor, kind of like a jicama flavor almost. But then it should finish off with like a sweet papaya finish is what it should give you, or like a tropical note finish. So that's why personally I prefer the Tobasiche. It's my favorite.
Yeah, this one is great for someone that maybe is new to mezcal. It's a good transition, entry level in terms of their appreciation, because it has that sweetness that people are used to, but it still has the strength that you expect when you drink a good mezcal.
Yep, super sweet and very approachable and bright. So I will hand this one off to you.
This is our third varietal. Again, this is a mono varietal, meaning one species of agave. This is Tepeztate. Tepeztate is the old boy of the bunch, taking 20 to 25 years to reach maturity before we harvest it. This guy is fantastic because it is truly a very unique mouthfeel. You get hints of jalapeno, you get rich minerality, and you get cooked agave. This one really absorbs the terroir. Again, we talk about, this plant has been in the earth for 20 years, so 2 decades before we're able to harvest it. So it's really absorbing those flavors of earth. And that's why we like to say aged in nature, because it just helps the client or guest have an appreciation for what this plant did before we were able to harvest it and turn it into the mezcal. This one is more geared towards your mezcal drinkers. I think we see most of the industry people really gravitate towards Tepeztate. It tends to be their favorite because it has that in-your-face kind of strength to it, but it's still very, very smooth for being 46% alcohol.
Yeah, that one's a good one. Some people aren't even allowed to drink before they're 21, and so that one's older than them. So I like that one, but I'm glad that you touched on the points of them being monovarietals, meaning only one specific species of agave. And it's very important to us for the line that you see here. So you guys have seen 3 monovarietals, right? In my family, my dad is one of 10 children. It's 3 males and 7 sisters. So when my grandfather created this, my great-grandfather created this, he wanted to model the line after his favorite son, which was Pedro, my grandfather. And he is the one that had the 10 children. So we have the 3 males taken care of in the monovarietals, because that's how they represent. But then we also have a blend of 7 wild agaves. And this one, which is called the Ensemble of 7, represents the 7 females of the family. And so it has Tobala, Tobasiche, Quiche, Lumbre, Coyote, Tepeztate, and Espadin. And the good thing about it is no other company has this out there. This is unique to us, unique to Arizona. We are the only ones. And it's cooked in all equal weights. It's all cooked together, it's all mashed together, it's all fermented together, and all distilled together to create a true marriage to represent all of the 7 sisters that Pedro had. And so that's truly how we just kind of package up the family and showcase the family and have you guys enjoy some great tasting mezcal that you guys cannot find anywhere else.
The notes on this one are very complex because it does have 7 different wild agaves in there, but it's still very balanced. And the great thing is you do get notes of pineapple to shine. So it again is another great crowd pleaser for those that maybe aren't used to mezcal, because the smokiness from it is very subtle, but it's so smooth. It definitely is a great gateway drug to get someone to experience mezcal for the first time. I highly recommend Ensemble Siete as well.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's I think that's my second favorite if I had to put them in line, but yeah.
Okay, and then bottle description.
Okay.
I'm do it.
You can do it.
I'll do it. All right, so the bottle you see here has a very unique design. The inspiration for this, our tia, Lorena, is the one who runs everything down in Oaxaca. She designed this cup after, this bottle after a cup she saw in one of the chambers of one of the kings. There's a beautiful temple called Montalban, and there's over 170 Zapotec kings buried there. Inside of one of the chambers of one of the kings, he had this studded cup buried with him. So that is the inspiration for it. So every time one of your guests is drinking from Mezcal Carreno, they're drinking from Zapotec royalty. This design is very distinctive, it's eye-catching, but also has a great story that you can give to your guests in order for them to truly appreciate the quality of mezcal they're getting, because both the story, the connection to Arizona and the family, but also back to the very roots of the indigenous people of Oaxaca. And that's really what we're trying to do, is build that bridge from Oaxaca to Arizona. And that's just a great way for you to connect to your guests by telling them a story like that. So now we're going to kind of dive more into the valley to valley flight. It's 4 different expressions from Mezcal Carreno. They all come from the central valleys of Oaxaca to the Valley of the Sun. We will be serving them in small little copitas, along with traditionally with sal de gusano.
Yep. And traditionally, you normally have the sal de gusano. That's just how tradition is, and that's because the salt will actually cause your mouth to dry out, and it'll cause it to salivate, and so it'll actually open up some of those pores and taste buds that you'll have, so you can actually receive those flavors and have it kind of be like an explosion in your mouth of different flavor profiles that you can have from the different mezcals.
And a great tip too for someone if they're going to have mezcal for the first time, that first sip is going to be very powerful. Your palate does adjust. It's best to wait a few seconds, a minute if you can, and then sip again, and you'll see each progressive sip actually gets more tasteful because your taste buds are now able to kind of calm down from the shock, and you're really able to hit those different agave notes. And that's why the sal de gusano really helps, because it allows you to amplify your taste so you can taste the differences in each of the mezcals. So again, the Valley to Valley flight is a great flight to suggest for groups because you can offer them something that's very unique, because a group of 4 friends might sit down and they could each have a different favorite because everyone's palate's different, it's been on a different journey, and something might stand out in the ensemble for Ivan versus the Tobasiche for Ivan.
That's right. Well, that's one of the things. I mean, I love to see it when we've got a group of like 4 friends, whether or not they've had mezcal or not, and then usually somebody's always like, oh, you're not gonna like this one. And I'm like, you know what? Try it anyways. And then they try it and they're like, that's my favorite. So everybody's got a different palate. So I always tell everybody, try it, then you know that you actually don't like it, but don't take anybody else's word for it because their palate's different.
Yeah. Just like going into a wine store, you would never know what your favorite wine is until you started trying some of the different varietals of grapes, and then you knew which is your favorite. Mezcal's that same way. People are gonna have to try it, and your flight you offer there at Centrico is a perfect offering to give someone an opportunity to sample each of these unique ones to find their favorite for future use.
Yep, and you have it with an orange as well too. So I don't know if we covered that, but it's always with an orange because the orange will have that sweet kind of flavor profile to it, so it'll help accentuate rather than a lime, where a lime has more like an acidity flavor, and it'll actually kill some of that flavor. So it's always with an orange, never with a lime. There are, you normally can drink mezcal neat, and that's how we traditionally do it, and that's how I enjoy it. How do you enjoy it?
Yep, I prefer it neat for the most time, but it's one of those things, if it's hot and you've been drinking mezcal neat for a long time, a great ice cold cocktail can be fantastic.
It's kind of like the gateway. That's how you mention it. There's one that actually I like a lot, which is a 2 ounce of tepestate. It is half an ounce of lime juice, 0.25 of lemon juice, and then half an ounce of Demerara simple syrup, all shaken, strained over the old school champagne glass, and then garnished with a little bit of an orange with a rim of sal de gusano. It's just perfect for a hot summer day.
Yep. In the end, the mezcal really can elevate any cocktail you're traditionally doing with tequila. But even then, you see Oaxacan old fashions. You have Oaxacan mules. So really, it works into all those different cocktails that you're already selling to your guests. But now you're just elevating it because the base spirit in there has a lot more depth to it. So don't be afraid to offer it as a good upsell to someone if they want something to a little bit better than their traditional old fashioned, or they want
well, my favorite, and sorry for interrupting, I was going to say my favorite is when they say the margarita, scratch that one, throw that one out. It's the mezcalita.
Yeah, or a paloma. There's so many different ways you can do it. And mezcal, choosing a nice higher end one is a great way for you to make additional money, but also give your clients something that they're going to walk out and go, wow, that was the best insert this cocktail they've ever had. And by putting in one of these unique ones, you can kind of ask them, do you like spice? Do you like papaya? Do you like smokiness? And then you can kind of choose one of the varietals that matches up what they're saying and have that added to their cocktail to cater it more to them, to try to hone in and guess what they're going to appreciate, and then give them that experience.
And I want to share with you guys some of the benefits. Some of the benefits for mezcal drinking is mezcal's an aperitif. You know what that is?
Yeah.
Perfect. An aperitif is anything that you normally drink about 30 minutes beforehand, before a dinner or before a meal, and it'll actually get your digestion process going. So as far as drinking spirits, this is the best spirit you can drink. It'll start the digestion process, so then if you eat something, and especially if you eat something heavy, like if you eat some pork or something that's going to be very, very greasy, after that meal as well too, you want to have a little bit of mezcal, so it'll help digest and process that very well for your stomach and your body.
Yep, so look at it as an after coffee drink, but also before. You can really get both sides of the coin for your guests. You can give them something before their meal if they're not hungry. If someone says, oh, I ate at happy hour, whatever it was, offer some mezcal, and then same thing, after a heavy meal, they're sitting there looking stuffed. Hey, you know what? I got a great suggestion. How about another little cup of mezcal, because it can actually help you digest. So these are fascinating ways that you can extend mezcal to someone to increase your amount of money that you're potentially going to make from them, but then also take care of the client at the same time.
That's right, and it's not a weaponized carb like it is with beer, which I normally like a lot. But weaponized carbs get changed directly into kind of like a stored fat by your liver. So when you drink mezcal or when you drink any other spirit kind of neat, it helps out. It still gets you that little bit of a buzz going, but then you don't have to work out those calories later at the gym.
Yeah, very beneficial. So our first love with mezcal was part dinner with family. That's how we believe mezcal should be enjoyed, is with food, friends, and family. And so it really does make part of the dinner experience. And we think there's so many different unique food pairings that you can go, like the tobola, for instance, goes.
Yeah, like the tobola, I think goes great with like veggies, like the veggie tacos. I think that would be a perfect pairing for that because it's floral, so it's going to give you that floral note from like the veggies and things like that because it's very super earthy like that. The tobasiche, I would normally go with like a pork taco, like the green chili pork.
Well, yeah, they have the green chili stew, so what you guys have there, that would be fantastic. That sweetness really works with that spice and that heaviness you get from that.
Yeah, tepestate for mine, personal favorite. I normally do either the shrimp tacos or the fish tacos. That's what I normally like to pair the tepestate with, sorry.
Yeah, tepestate is always going to work really well with seafood. If you ever have any ceviches, things like that, it can really shine.
Yep.
And then our ensemble, it's groundbreaking. It really can go with anything because it's just so balanced. It has a way of allowing it to work. I personally think it's great for a dessert. So if someone is going to get that dessert and then they want that after drink, a nice little ensemble is a great way to cap off your dessert style.
Especially now that it's getting hot and you have all the freaking ice cream at the end, you're just like, and then finish that off with a neat mezcal. Perfect day.